Welcome to Crime Stoppers. I'm your host, Chip Brown. Heartland Crime Stoppers is a community-based program designed to help law enforcement solve crimes by providing a way for the public to phone in tips anonymously and receive cash rewards of up to $3,000 for information that leads to an arrest, the recovery of stolen property, or the recovery of illegal drugs. Heartland Crime Stoppers is funded through the State of Florida Office of the Attorney General Crime Stoppers Trust Fund and through donations from the community. Citizens and local businesses make Crime Stoppers work. On today's show, we will talk with Chief Judge Donald Jacobsen from the 10th Judicial Circuit. Centered in the heart of Florida's 20 judicial circuits, the 10th Circuit serves Hardy, Highlands, and Polk counties. The Tri-County area has diverse localities ranging from urbanized population centers to profoundly rural areas. 28 circuit judges and 12 county judges serve a population of just over 720,000 people in a 3,600 square mile area. Judge Jacobsen, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you. Now, tell us a little bit about how you grew up in New York and ended up down South Florida and to a litigation attorney and now a Chief Circuit Judge.
Yeah, I was born in New York, raised in Connecticut. My father was the lawyer that commuted every day on the New Haven Railroad from South Connecticut into New York. And he died when I was 12 years old, and my mom moved my brother and myself down to Fort Lauderdale. So I did my real growing up down in Fort Lauderdale back in the 60s. Went off to the University of Florida, where I met my wife of 44 years. And she was from the Lakeland area, and that's what got my foothold into Lakeland. I was able to come here and get a job with a firm who was Lane, Trone, Clark, Bertrand, eventually Lane, Trone, Clark, Bertrand, Vreeland, and Jacobsen. And I was there for over 20 years, primarily doing civil litigation, but courtroom work. I mean, I was a trial lawyer. I've always prided myself in being a trial lawyer. I was appointed to the bench in 1997 by not by judge, but by the governor at that point. And have served in a judge capacity in the circuit court ever since. I've had the opportunity to have sat in each and every one of our various divisions down there and was elected as chief judge for our circuit about a year and a half ago. It's a position, the chief judge position is an administrative position. I still fill in and do trial work, but it's more just managing, as you pointed out, the 40 judges in the various divisions throughout the circuit.
Yeah, that is, I just can't imagine that workload that comes through, and I'm just trying to visualize that you're a civil litigation attorney and you get the call from the governor saying, oh, by the way, we're going to give you a position as circuit court judge. I can imagine the elation that. Oh yeah,
and it was something. It was something in the back of my mind, and one of the things that I take some pride in was that it was always in the back of my mind to become a judge. And as Judge Bentley was getting ready to retire, I got a phone call from his judicial assistant, his secretary, asking me to come visit him. And I thought, oh geez, what have I done now? So I went in and sat down with Judge Bentley, and Judge Bentley said to me, Don, he says, I've understood that you have a desire to become a judge. I'm retiring, and I would like you to take my place. So I put my name in, and the governor appointed me. So that was 1997.
Well, that certainly speaks highly of your dedication and hard work over those 20 years at Lane Trone.
And I was able to bring to the bench being a trial lawyer. I mean, I prided myself in being able to try cases, and it's one of the things that, you know, I'm most comfortable in a courtroom. So this administrative role is a little different, but it's a very necessary role. I still like getting back in the courtroom and presiding over cases.
Yeah, certainly when you want to go back to your roots, it feels very comfortable, and it's just home, if you will, so to speak.
Yep.
Now, there are a number of different divisions, you know, in the court, and a lot of the people don't know how they were broken out, but one of the ones that we talked about earlier, there actually is a homicide division that a judge, you know, presides over primarily homicide cases. Now, that's got to be quite an honor, and of course, any position that a judge, any circuit or division that he's in is important. But I would think when you are going to be assigned to homicide cases, this really kind of makes you step up your game.
Well, it does. I mean, the homicide cases, not that any case is not serious. Every case is serious. I mean, every case affects those that are involved in it. But the homicide cases, by their very nature, are very well researched by the lawyers. They're very well investigated by law enforcement. I mean, everyone steps it up as far as the preparation and presentation. And there are longer cases. I mentioned to you before we started that in the typical felony division, which is the criminal division, a lot of the cases are little short stories. You know, you've got a burglary and you've got a number, just a few people that are involved in the investigation and witnesses that come to testify. In the homicide cases, I liken them to novels. Every one of them has various chapters, from those that are investigating it, the crime scene technicians, the DNA if it's available, fingerprint specialists, photographers. You've got the detectives that are very highly trained in doing investigations. You've got the various witnesses. So those cases take anywhere from, the shortest ones are usually a week or two, up to, you know, sometimes as many as 4 to 5 weeks for a trial. But they are, and everyone takes it very seriously because of the nature of what you're dealing with and the impact on those that are involved in both the crime and the defendant.
You literally, at that point, in many cases, have someone's life in your hands, if you will, and you've got to make sure that they get a fair trial, they follow the rules of law, and that the playing ground is, if you will, is level, so you know they do get a fair and impartial trial.
And that's really one of the roles. You know, a judge is sitting up there as a neutral party. I mean, the judge is, I tell people that I don't really care what the verdict is. I tell the lawyers I don't care what the outcome is, as long as it's just. It's up to the lawyers to present their cases. It's up to the judge to preside, to make sure that the rules of evidence are complied with and that a fair trial is provided to anybody accused of a crime. Because you have to remember, these people, while they're sitting as defendants, they are presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond and to the exclusion of all reasonable doubt. So it's up to a judge to make sure that it's a fair forum in which the evidence is presented, that the evidence is presented properly, and the constitutional rights are protected, which is one of the most fundamental aspects of what a judge does.
Now, I think you said it during your time when you were in that homicide division, there were over 70 cases of which you had a personal contact with or had influence on, about 40 of those.
Well, I was actually, during the 4 years I was in the homicide division, we cleared a little over 70 cases, either by trial, by plea agreements, by the state eventually null prosing a case because there wasn't sufficient evidence to proceed. You know, any number of different reasons, and I think we tried somewhere around 40 cases, but we actually cleared or disposed of over 70.
Yeah, that's a shame that we have that number
well,
in our circuit.
You mentioned the divisions. It used to be that the homicide cases were tried by the particular individual divisions, but we reached the point that there were sufficient numbers of homicides, unfortunately, that it really took a dedicated judge that could spend 2 and 3 weeks out of their docket trying particular cases. The other benefit is that the lawyers involved from both the state and the defense are answerable only to one judge rather than to have to schedule through 5 or 6 different judges. So it works well for us to have a single homicide division and cases. And even there, though, we run into, for example, Judge Harb is the judge presiding over homicide at this point, and he will, in essence, sometimes double book cases, that he'll end up taking one, and if the other one goes to trial also, I'll take it, so that we try to keep these cases moving through the system. But the cases, because of their very nature and the investigation that needs to be done, take quite a while to get through the system. People complain about that, but I mean, they are thoroughly researched, thoroughly investigated. and it takes quite a while to get those cases geared up for a trial.
Yes. Now, also, I'm not sure if people are aware of this as well, but especially on the cases where the death sentence has been invoked, these cases are not appealed by somebody. They automatically go to the Supreme Court of Florida for review. So every time that you say anything or write anything or make notes or rulings, they're under a microscope.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that, as a judge sitting in that homicide division, you really are at the top of your game, because the demands upon you to know the law, to anticipate the questions, to anticipate the issues that are going to be coming up, to rule on them. And one of the things that we at the trial court level sometimes laugh about the Supreme Court or even the appellate courts is that we make decisions in the moment. We are called upon, objection, Your Honor, and you have to rule. The appellate courts have months, if not years, to evaluate what you're making a decision on, and not so much spur of the moment, but at that time that you have to make a ruling so things can move forward.
I would liken it to if you're driving down the highway and all of a sudden there's an obstacle in front of you, you've got to make a split-second decision. Do I stop? Do I merge left? Do I merge right? You have to look for traffic. And you don't have hours or months or weeks or to go back and say, well, let me look at this from a different angle. You have to make, in many cases, that split-second decision, and you have to be ready for that, like you said.
And that's a good analogy, because you get an accident reconstruction expert to come in and say, well, this is what you could have done, or what you should have done, but at that moment, you're making, like you just said, a split-second decision based on the information that you've got in front of you then. So it's and in the homicide cases, you do take it very seriously. Not that you don't, not that judges don't in the other divisions, but the consequences are so big in what you're doing that, and like you said, in the death penalty cases, it's an automatic appeal directly to the Supreme Court. As soon as you're done with the case, the transcripts are prepared and sent to the Supreme Court.
Your Honor, thank you for your insight this morning. I'm going to ask you to stick around for a few more minutes until we go on to something else here.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Crime Stoppers provides a way for local law enforcement to receive information on crimes while keeping the people providing that information anonymous. These efforts increase tips, which in turn solve more crimes and identify criminals in our community. Here's a look at some of our most recent cases.
On Saturday, December 31st at 9:05 a.m., this suspect robbed the Advanced America Cash America business at 1521 Cumbie Road in unincorporated Lakeland. He was armed, wearing all black clothing with a red bandana covering his face. He is a black male, approximately 6'5". After committing the robbery, he fled in an unknown direction. At approximately 12:48 p.m. on Thursday, December 15, 2016, a retail theft occurred at the 7-Eleven located at 2993 Duff Road in Lakeland. An unknown white male with a shaved head, plaid shirt, jeans, and a large tattoo on his chest entered the store accompanied by an unknown female who is described as having blonde hair, a black tank top, capris, and a tattoo on her right shoulder. The male suspect concealed several items and left the store without paying for them. The female was seen driving a newer white model Nissan with a black roof. Both suspects fled in the Nissan in an unknown direction. At approximately 2:36 a.m. on Thursday, December 15, 2016, the Polk County Sheriff's Office investigated a series of conveyance burglaries that occurred on Iris Ann Drive in Lakeland. The suspects were flipping door handles in the neighborhood. The suspects fled the area in a white newer model crew cab Chevrolet or GMC. The suspects appear to be thin adult males with hoodies or hats, wearing gloves, and an unknown race. Polk County Sheriff's detectives are seeking the public's help in a business burglary investigation. At approximately 11:30 p.m. on December 20th, 2016, 4 subjects approached the Marathon gas station located at 628 Wabash Avenue North in Lakeland. While at the location, the suspects unlawfully entered the business and removed property. The suspects fled on foot. The suspects committed a second burglary at the same business the following night. The Polk County Sheriff's Office needs your help. On July 27, 2016, two suspects used a clone credit card to make a purchase at the Haines City Walmart store. On the same day, the same subjects used that card again at an Auburndale Walmart. Polk County Sheriff's Office detectives are asking for the public's help in identifying a theft investigation. On Sunday, November 20th, 2016, an unknown suspect used the victim's credit card information to make multiple transactions on an ATM. It is believed the transactions were made using a skimmed credit card. The suspect was seen using the fake card at Walgreens located at 45549 Highway 27 in Davenport. The suspect was described as being young, white, or Hispanic male with dark short hair who was wearing a dark-colored t-shirt with what appeared to be dark-colored shorts. If you have any information on any of the cases you've just seen or any information on an unsolved crime, please contact Heartland Crime Stoppers and leave an anonymous tip. The toll-free tip line is 1-800-226-TIPS. That's 8477. You can also leave an anonymous web tip by going to www.heartlandcrimestoppers.com and click on the Give a Tip tab, or by going to www.p3tips.com. Don't forget, you can download our free P3 Tips app on your smart device. Whichever way you choose to leave a tip, you will remain 100% anonymous. If your tip results in an arrest, the recovery of stolen property, or the recovery of illegal drugs, you could be eligible for a cash reward of up to $3,000.
Welcome back to Crime Stoppers. I'm your host, Chip Brown. The 10th Judicial Circuit is a court of general jurisdiction and is comprised of 5 divisions: civil, criminal, family, juvenile, and probate. We are back with Judge Donald Jacobsen, the Chief Judge of the 10th Judicial Circuit. Judge Jacobsen, thank you for sticking around and coming back on the show.
My pleasure.
I'm hoping, I don't know if maybe you recognize some of the folks that we just profiled in here, so you never know, you have a lot of people come through your courts, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I mean the court is a very, very busy place. One of the things that we're blessed with here though in the 10th Circuit is that we've got consummate professionals at the State Attorney's Office, the Public Defender's Office, the Regional Conflict Counsel's Office, law enforcement. I mean, and it's a really, to some extent, a team effort to make sure that cases are moved through the system, that justice is provided. And I keep getting back to the fact that is, each of us have our different roles, but you know, the judges really are bent upon making sure that there's a just result in every case that individually comes in front of a judge. I mean, it's a very important function judges serve, but you know, we realize that we're part of a government, and that government is made up of the 3 branches. And just to get into that for a moment, the legislature writes the laws that are enforced by the executive branch, which is law enforcement, and it's all reviewed by the judicial branch, which is the judges. So each has a role in that, but here in the 10th Circuit, we're blessed that everyone works well together, you know, maintaining their own roles, but there's a good cooperation amongst the various constitutional officers. I should point out that our clerk of court, Stacy Butterfield, just does a wonderful job in taking care of us down or over at the courthouse.
Yeah, they have a number of people. Like I say, there are so many moving parts, you know, when someone gets a traffic ticket or gets arrested for burglary, or gets charged, with aggravated assault or homicide. No matter what it is, there are still certain things that have to go through and processed, and it is just like I say, that air traffic controller, you're always got planes coming in and always planes taking off.
And it's truly amazing the numbers of people that travel through the courthouse, not the least of which is those that are in custody that are facing some charges that have to be brought in front of a judge. I mean, the logistics that goes through the sheriff's office to get them transported up from South County into holding cells, out in front of a judge for particular hearings, and then back. I mean, it's just it really is just a logistical nightmare over there, which is done very, very well by those involved.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people think that you as a judge have total leeway in your courtroom as to sentencing and what you can do, and it just depends on, maybe how you feel that day is what comes off. You really have followed the same rules of law as anyone else.
Yeah, and it's a matter that you start with our oath of office. We're sworn to uphold the Constitution of the state of Florida and the United States government. We also have canons of ethics, and our canons of ethics require us to apply the law in a neutral way. And as part of that, people have some thought that, well, a judge is being hard on somebody or not hard on somebody, equally situated. And that's not really true. What happens is the legislature, like I said, they write the laws. They have written laws that constrict what judges can and cannot do. They authorize the state attorney to make some decisions in some people's for the crimes that they've committed. And then a lot of times the cases are brought to the judge in the form of a plea agreement, where the judge really doesn't know much about the case other than what the charges are. They don't know how well-founded or how well supported by witnesses they might be. But the attorneys with their client on behalf of the defense will come to the judge and say, "Judge, we've agreed to this disposition." And a judge is authorized at that point to either accept it or reject it. They can't say, "Oh no, but if you change it this way or that," or "I'm ordering you to change it this way or that." So a lot of cases are resolved through the negotiations of the attorneys, who obviously know the case much better than the judge. But so it's a matter that some discretion is there, but not as much as people would think.
Now, one of the things we talked about is when people get home this afternoon, open their mail, and there's a jury summons. They're going, "Whoopee, I get to go to court." In reality, they're thinking, "How can I get out of this?" But jury duty is just the basis of our court system.
And it really is. And I just want to emphasize to anybody watching, when you receive that jury summons, it is not only an obligation, but it's a privilege to be a juror. You go back to the jury system in the United States dates back to actually the Declaration of Independence, where one of the complaints against the King of England right there in the Declaration is for depriving us of the benefit of trial by jury. And that concept, that theme, is carried into the Constitution in two of the amendments on the Bill of Rights, both for civil and criminal, that everyone is entitled to be tried by a jury of their peers. And when people receive their summonses, it is their obligation as a citizen of this country to come down and honor that summons. It is also their privilege. Our system is the best in the world, and it works because we have citizens that are willing to step up and fulfill their role as jurors. It's just fundamental to our system. So I just want to emphasize to everyone the need to honor your summons and not look for ways to get out of it.
Absolutely. One of the other things that we talked about earlier when we were talking, you indicated that you really don't enjoy sentencing people to prison terms. That may seem a little unusual to a lot of folks, but there's really a lot of reasoning behind that.
Yeah, it's a kind of when I see somebody that I am sentencing, and let me back up and just say again, I'm obligated as a judge to to follow the law and impose sentences. And the legislature said that the primary purpose of sentencing is to punish the offender for the crime they've committed. And I, very readily move forward and fulfill my obligation of sending people off to prison. Emotionally, I don't like sending anybody to incarceration. I mean, it's a matter that, they've done something wrong, they deserve to be punished, but I don't take any pleasure in seeing anybody go off to prison. I mean, it's a failure for them, it's a failure for their family, it's a failure for society. I just don't, it's not something that I would say, oh boy, I'm getting to go sentence somebody today.
Yeah, so many people think that that is what judges live for, to put people in jail. And that's not, like you say, that's not really their role. Their role is to enforce the laws of the state and have a fair trial. Because if that were me sitting there being tried, I would want somebody that I knew was a jury of my peers that cared about the case and not come to jury duty because they'd already seen Judge Judy last week.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and judges, I mean, they take their role very seriously. And all of us, I really think, strive to treat each case individually. I mean, that's one of the things that can happen with these large dockets, is it just becomes, it's capable of becoming just kind of, oh, let's go through the motions. And I don't think judges do that. I think judges really sit there and try to look at the individual case that is then in front of them and impose justice as best they can.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility for the judges, and people need to realize it's not one that's taken lightly. I'm sure that as you ponder some of these things on nights, you'd rather be sleeping when you're thinking of these cases.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the division that occurs in the most is the juvenile dependency division, where you're dealing with kids, and every decision you make as a judge is directly affecting a child. I mean, that is the division that at least speaking for myself, when I sat in that division, I would go home every night and not second guess what I've done, but just understand the consequences of what I've done. A lot of the other divisions you don't take home with you quite as emotionally as you do dealing with young children.
Yeah, because in this case, you have the young children that really don't have any say, if you will, and you're trying to look into that crystal ball and gather the facts and make a decision based on the facts that have been presented. And you're affecting these kids for their lives and years to come.
That is something that is difficult, at least it was for me. I mean, I was in that division for a few years, and it was the one that you take home every night.
Yeah. Well, Your Honor, thank you for coming on the show today. You've given us a lot of information, and I hope people will certainly take to heart, especially the part about the jury duty and how important that is.
And I would really, once again, encourage anyone receiving that summons. It is really a privilege and an obligation as a citizen to honor that summons. So I encourage you to come on down to the courthouse.
For more information on the 10th Judicial Circuit, you can check them out on the web at www.jud10.flcourts.org. That's going to do it for this edition of Crime Stoppers. Keep in mind that Heartland Crime Stoppers is an organization that helps law enforcement solve crimes through anonymous tips and monetary rewards. It encourages a cooperative partnership between law enforcement, the media, and the community to ensure security and enhance our quality of life here in Polk County. For more information, you can check us out on the web at heartlandcrimestoppers.com or follow us on Facebook at Heartland Crime Stoppers Florida. Until next time, keep in mind, it's a crime and you can help make sure that they don't get away with it.